Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit dorm room, the silence was palpable as each card was dealt, destiny unfolding with every snap against the wooden table. Hunter's heartbeat reverberated in his ears, synchronizing with the rhythmic slaps of the cards being played. The air felt heavy with anticipation as they reached the climax of their weekly ritual, a high-stakes poker game among roommates. He surveyed his hand, his fingers clutching at his last two cards as if his life depended on them. In that moment, the room's atmosphere thickened, amplified by the realization that this was not just a game, but a battle of wits. "The winner takes all," Miguel proclaimed, his confident voice cutting through the tension as he displayed his cards. A full house. The others leaned in, eager to witness the ultimate showdown. Hunter's eyes flickered to his hand, helplessly holding onto a dwindling hope. A pair of sevens, like a feeble joke amidst the intensity of the game's climax. The true stakes had been set at the beginning of the game. The loser would spend an entire day cross-dressed at Westfield Mall.
"Looks like we have our winner. And our loser,"
Drew announced, clapping Hunter on the shoulder.
"Time to pay up, buddy."
Hunter ran a hand through his short brown hair, his broad shoulders slumping in defeat. "This is ridiculous. Can't I just buy everyone pizza for a month or something?"
"A bet's a bet,"
Zach chimed in, already scrolling through his phone.
"Besides, we've already ordered everything. Express shipping wasn't cheap, you know."
Hunter glanced at his roommates' eager faces. They'd been planning this humiliation for weeks, it seemed. The four of them had been inseparable since freshman year, but their idea of fun sometimes bordered on cruel. Still, Hunter had agreed to the terms, never imagining he'd actually lose.
"When?"
he asked, his voice barely audible over the dorm room's ancient air conditioner.
"This Saturday. Don't worry, we'll make you look pretty."
Drew winked, and the room erupted in laughter. For the next 2 days, Hunter could barely concentrate on his engineering finals. Every time his mind wandered, it returned to the impending humiliation. By Friday night, a package arrived containing what would become his Saturday outfit. "Rise and shine, Georgia!" Miguel's voice cut through Hunter's fitful sleep early Saturday morning. The nickname, derived from his full name, Hunter George Williams, elicited groans from beneath the covers.
"This isn't happening,"
Hunter muttered, pulling the blanket over his head. Drew yanked the covers away.
"Oh, it's happening. Bathroom. Now. Zach's sister gave us a full tutorial on makeup application."
The next 2 hours passed in a blur of unfamiliar sensations. The cool stroke of foundation against his clean-shaven face, the gentle tug of an elastic waistband, the strange weightlessness of having long hair cascade past his shoulders.
"Stand up. Let's see the full effect,"
Zach commanded, stepping back with a makeup brush still in hand. Reluctantly, Hunter rose from the chair. The mirror across the room reflected someone he barely recognized. A flowing pink floral sundress hugged his waist, flaring out just enough to create the illusion of curves. White strappy sandals adorned his freshly shaved legs, adding 3 inches to his already considerable height. Most transformative was the long blonde wig cascading in gentle waves down his back, framing his face in a way that softened his angular features.
"Holy shit!"
Drew whistled.
"You actually look kind of hot?"
Hunter's face burned beneath the makeup.
"Shut up." "No, seriously."
Miguel circled him, adjusting the wig slightly.
If I didn't know better, I'd totally ask for your number. Great. Fantastic. Hunter grumbled, trying to pull the sundress lower on his thighs. Can we get this over with? The drive to Westfield Mall felt like a trip to the gallows. Hunter, or Georgia, as his roommates insisted on calling him now, sat in the back seat, arms crossed tightly over his chest, while the others took turns snapping photos and roaring with laughter. Remember the rules, Zach said as they pulled into the parking lot. You have to spend at least 6 hours here, walking around like any other shopper. You have to use the women's restroom if nature calls, and you have to respond when anyone addresses you as a woman. This is humiliating, Hunter hissed, his voice barely audible. That's the point, Drew replied cheerfully. We'll be following at a distance. Don't try anything funny. The mall entrance loomed ahead like the gateway to hell itself. Hunter took a deep breath, adjusted the strap of the small purse they'd forced onto his shoulder, and stepped out of the car. The first few steps in the sandals were wobbly, but he quickly found his balance. The dress swished around his legs with each movement, a constant reminder of his predicament. His first test came almost immediately. As he approached the automatic doors, an elderly man held them open.
After you, miss,
he said with a grandfatherly smile. Hunter's voice caught in his throat. He managed a quick nod and scurried past, hearing his roommate's stifled laughter behind him. The cool air inside the mall brought goosebumps to his exposed arms. Saturday was one of the busiest shopping days, and the concourse teemed with people, potential witnesses to his humiliation. He kept his eyes down, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other.
Excuse me, miss?
Hunter nearly jumped out of his skin. A young man in a blue polo shirt had approached him from a kiosk selling hand creams. Would you like to try our new spring collection? Your skin looks a bit dry. Hunter blinked, momentarily forgetting his situation.
It's perfectly fine if you're not interested,
the salesman continued, his smile unwavering.
But you look like someone who takes care of herself.
The compliment, however mundane and sales-driven, struck Hunter unexpectedly. No one had ever suggested he took care of himself before. His roommates often teased him about his minimal grooming routine. Sure, he found himself saying, his voice pitched slightly higher than normal. Why not? For the next 10 minutes, Hunter, Georgia, received a hand massage and moisturizing treatment, while the salesman chatted amiably about skincare. Not once did the man give any indication that he suspected Georgia was anything other than what she appeared to be. Your hands are going to be so soft now, the salesman said, finishing up. Your boyfriend will definitely notice. Hunter blushed furiously. Thank you. I should go now. Walking away from the kiosk, Hunter caught a glimpse of his roommates watching from the food court, clearly amused by his interaction. He straightened his back and continued walking, determined to get through the day with at least some dignity intact. The next few hours passed more easily than expected. Hunter browsed through stores, occasionally catching glimpses of himself in mirrors and display windows. Each time, the stranger who stared back, this blonde woman in a pink floral dress, seemed less and less foreign. Around lunchtime, he found himself in a long line at the food court. Behind him, 2 men in their 20s were engaged in conversation. Hunter kept his eyes forward, focusing on the menu board. Excuse me. One of the men tapped his shoulder. My friend and I were wondering if you'd like to join us for lunch? Hunter turned, certain this was some kind of trap, but the men's expressions seemed genuinely hopeful, even a bit nervous. I'm Ryan. the taller one said, extending his hand.
This is Chris.
I'm
Georgia,
Hunter replied, the name feeling strange on his lips.
Thank you, but I'm meeting friends.
He gestured vaguely toward where his roommates were pretending not to watch.
Of course.
Ryan nodded, looking disappointed.
Maybe next time.
You have beautiful hair, by the way. As they walked away, Hunter stood frozen in line, processing what had just happened. 2 attractive men had asked him, or rather Georgia, to lunch. They'd complimented his hair, not as a joke or a dare, but seemingly in earnest. Something shifted inside him in that moment. A curiosity, a question forming that he'd never considered before. After getting his food, Hunter spotted his roommates waving him over. He approached their table with newfound confidence, sliding into a chair with a grace he didn't know he possessed.
Dude, those guys were totally hitting on you,
Zach said, eyes wide with amusement.
I know,
Hunter replied, taking a delicate bite of his salad.
They said I have beautiful hair.
His roommates exchanged glances, clearly surprised by his response.
You're enjoying this?
Miguel asked incredulously. Hunter shrugged, allowing a small smile.
It's not as terrible as I thought it would be.
The afternoon continued, with Hunter gradually relaxing into his role. He found himself lingering in clothing stores, fingers brushing against soft fabrics, noting styles that complemented his figure. In a moment of boldness, he even entered a makeup store, where a cheerful consultant showed him how to apply lip gloss.
You have such a natural beauty, the consultant gushed. You barely need any makeup at all.
By hour 5, Hunter's feet were aching from the sandals, but something else had emerged, a strange reluctance to see the day end. When his roommates texted that they were ready to leave, he found himself asking for 1 more hour.
I want to check out the bookstore,
he texted back, surprising even himself. In the bookstore's quiet corner, Hunter browsed the fiction section, occasionally glancing at his reflection in the darkened windows. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, not as the awkward engineering student who blended into the background, but as someone who commanded attention simply by existing.
Finding everything okay?
A bookseller asked, approaching with a smile.
Yes, thank you,
Hunter replied, his higher-pitched Georgia voice now coming naturally.
Let me know if you need recommendations. I'm Rachel, by the way.
Georgia,
Hunter responded without hesitation. The name no longer felt borrowed. It felt like an alternate version of himself that had always existed somewhere beneath the surface. When the mall finally began closing, Hunter met his roommates at the entrance. They looked bored and ready to go home, their phones nearly dead from a day of idle scrolling.
You must be dying to get out of that getup,
Drew commented as they walked to the car. Hunter nodded non-committally, his mind elsewhere. Throughout the drive back to campus, his roommates recounted various reactions they'd observed, laughing at the men who'd shown interest in Georgia.
The bet's officially paid,
Zach declared as they piled back into the dorm room.
You're a free man again, Hunter.
Hunter retreated to the bathroom with the makeup remover they'd provided. As he wiped away the foundation and mascara, he studied his face emerging from beneath Georgia's. Something felt off, like shedding a skin that fit better than his own. Later that night, after his roommates had gone to sleep or left for parties, Hunter sat alone at his computer. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing. How to know if you're transgender. The next morning, while his roommates slept off their hangovers, Hunter slipped out to a coffee shop with campus Wi-Fi. For hours, he read stories, medical information, and personal accounts of gender dysphoria. Many experiences resonated with feelings he'd pushed aside for years: discomfort with his body, never feeling quite right in male spaces, the strange comfort he'd found in Georgia's skin for just one day. When he returned to the dorm, he found the blonde wig stuffed unceremoniously in the trash can. Without thinking, he rescued it, smoothing the synthetic strands before hiding it under his bed. The following week passed in a blur of final exams and graduation preparations. Hunter said nothing about his experience as Georgia, laughing along when his roommates referenced, "That time Hunter had to be a chick for a day." But late at night, alone in his room, he sometimes slipped on the wig, studying his reflection and wondering about possibilities. 2 weeks after graduation, Hunter signed a lease on a small studio apartment across town from his new engineering job. His roommates helped him move, punching his shoulder and promising to stay in touch. They never noticed the small box of women's clothes he'd quietly ordered online and hidden among his belongings. The first night alone in his new place, Hunter unpacked that special box. Inside lay a modest selection: a blue sundress, not unlike the pink floral one from the mall, a pair of low heels, some basic makeup, and the blonde wig, now properly cleaned and styled. His heart raced as he changed, each item feeling like coming home to himself. That night, Georgia returned. She ordered takeout and watched Netflix, doing nothing extraordinary, but feeling for the first time wholly comfortable in her own skin. Over the next months, Georgia's wardrobe grew. Hunter still went to work as himself, building a reputation as a competent, if quiet, engineer. But evenings and weekends belonged to Georgia. She ventured out occasionally, a quick grocery run, a movie, even dinner alone at a quiet restaurant, each excursion building her confidence. 6 months after graduation, Hunter received a text from Miguel about a reunion dinner. Panic gripped him. He'd avoided his old friends, making excuses about work commitments, afraid they would somehow see the changes in him. But he couldn't avoid them forever. The dinner was set for a Friday night at a restaurant downtown. Hunter arrived early, dressed in his most masculine outfit, dark jeans and a button-down shirt that now felt like a costume. His hair had grown out a bit, but not enough to raise questions.
"Hunter!"
Drew called, waving from a corner table.
"Man, where have you been hiding?"
The evening passed with stories of new jobs, dating disasters, and reminiscences about college. Hunter smiled and nodded, contributing when necessary, but feeling increasingly like an imposter. These men knew a version of him that no longer existed.
"Remember that bet?"
Zach laughed midway through dinner.
"When Hunter had to be a girl for a day?"
Everyone chuckled, including Hunter, though his laugh sounded hollow even to his own ears.
"You were surprisingly convincing,"
Miguel added.
"Those guys actually thought you were hot."
Hunter took a long sip of water, his throat suddenly dry.
"Yeah, wild times. You got a girlfriend yet?"
Drew asked, changing the subject. "There's this woman at my office who'd be perfect for you."
"I'm focusing on my career right now,"
Hunter replied, the standard excuse he'd prepared. As the night wore on, the disconnect grew. These men had been his closest friends for 4 years, yet they had no idea who he truly was, who he was becoming. By the time they parted ways with promises to meet again soon, Hunter had made a decision. Back in his apartment, he stood before the mirror, studying his reflection. Male clothes, short hair, stubble on his chin, all markers of a person he no longer recognized.
I can't keep living two lives,
he whispered to his reflection. The following Monday, Hunter requested a meeting with his supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Elaine, who had always treated him fairly.
I need to discuss something personal that will affect my workplace presentation,
he began, hands trembling slightly on his lap. Elaine nodded, giving him her full attention.
Go ahead. I'm transgender,
Hunter said, the words both terrifying and liberating. I have been living as a woman outside of work, and I want to begin my transition fully, including at the office. Elaine's expression remained professional. Thank you for sharing this with me. What name would you prefer we use? Georgia, she replied, tears of relief springing to her eyes. Georgia Williams. The company proved surprisingly supportive. Human Resources arranged sensitivity training, email announcements were drafted, and Georgia's name was updated in the system. There were awkward moments, of course, colleagues who stumbled over pronouns, clients who remembered the old name, but overall, the transition at work went more smoothly than she'd dared hope. Her family proved a greater challenge. Her parents struggled with the news, requesting time to process. Her younger sister, however, immediately began sending links to makeup tutorials and offering her closet for Georgia to raid. I always wanted a sister, she said during their first video call after Georgia came out. Though I guess I always had one. As months passed, Georgia's confidence grew. Her blonde hair, no longer a wig but her own growing out, became a signature feature. She developed a style of her own, professional dresses in bold colors for work, casual sundresses for weekends, always with comfortable yet feminine shoes. The 1-year anniversary of that fateful poker game approached. Georgia stood in her apartment, preparing for a rare evening out to celebrate her journey. The pink floral sundress, purchased to replace the one from the bet, hung on her closet door. She'd come full circle. Her phone buzzed with a text from Miguel. Hey man, annual poker night next Saturday. You in? Georgia smiled at the phone. They still didn't know. After declining their invitations for months, she'd gradually fallen out of touch with her college friends. It was time to reintroduce herself. I'd love to catch up, she typed back. But I'm not the person you remember. A lot has changed. Coffee sometime? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Sure. Everything okay? Everything is finally right, she replied. I'll explain in person. The following week, Georgia sat at a corner table in a quiet cafe, wearing a blue dress that complemented her eyes and blonde hair that now reached past her shoulders. She spotted Miguel the moment he walked in, watched his eyes scan the room, passing over her initially before returning with confusion. Hunter? He asked, approaching cautiously. It's Georgia now, she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. Thanks for meeting me. Miguel sat down slowly, his expression cycling through confusion, surprise, and finally understanding. The mall day. That wasn't just a bet for you, was it? Georgia shook her head. It was the first time I felt like myself. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Miguel asked questions, some awkward, but all genuine. He laughed when Georgia recounted her first attempts at applying eyeliner, and grew serious when she described telling her parents. By their second coffee, the initial strangeness had faded. You seem happy, Miguel finally said. Happier than I ever remember seeing you in college. I am, Georgia confirmed. For the first time, I'm not pretending. The guys will be surprised, Miguel mused.
But you know what? I bet they'll get over it pretty quick, especially once they see how good you look as a blonde.
Georgia laughed, tension releasing from her shoulders. 1 down, 2 to go. Over the following weeks, she met individually with Drew and Zach. Drew struggled more, asking if this was some elaborate counterprank, before finally accepting the truth. Zach surprised her by immediately offering to introduce her to his sister for shopping trips and girl talk. The next poker night found Georgia in Miguel's apartment, dealing cards with perfectly manicured nails, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She'd chosen a casual outfit, jeans and a floral blouse that emphasized her developing curves after months of hormone therapy. "Full house," she declared, spreading her cards on the table to groans from her friends. "Transitioning clearly didn't affect your poker skills," Drew grumbled, tossing his losing hand down. "Some things never change," Georgia replied with a smile, collecting her chips. Later, as they ordered pizza and opened beers, Zach raised his bottle in a toast.
To Georgia, who had the guts to become who she really is.
"To Georgia," the others echoed, clinking bottles. She felt tears pricking her eyes as she raised her own drink. 1 year ago, a lost bet had seemed like the worst luck imaginable. Now she recognized it as the catalyst that freed her to discover her authentic self. "Thank you," she said simply. "For losing to me then, and accepting me now." The evening continued with laughter and stories, the friendship adjusting to its new configuration, but remaining fundamentally unchanged. Georgia looked around at the faces of the men who had unknowingly helped her find herself, and felt profound gratitude. A year after that fateful poker night, Georgia walked confidently through Westfield Mall, this time as herself by choice. She wore a green summer dress that swished pleasantly around her knees, blonde hair flowing freely down her back. No one followed, watching for her discomfort. No one waited to laugh at her missteps. She paused at the kiosk, where a salesman had once treated her as a woman without question. Different staff worked there now, but as she tested a hand cream, the sensation brought her journey full circle. "That one suits you perfectly," the saleswoman commented. "It complements your natural glow." Georgia smiled, purchasing the cream. "Thank you. I feel like I've been glowing for about a year now." She continued her shopping, stopping to help an elderly woman reach a high shelf, chatting with a barista who complimented her dress, exchanging smiles with a young mother struggling with a stroller. Small, ordinary interactions, all as her authentic self. Near the food court, she spotted a familiar face. Ryan, the man who had asked Georgia to lunch a year ago. He stood in line at a coffee shop, scrolling through his phone. On impulse, she approached. "Excuse me," she said. "This might sound strange, but did you once ask a woman in a pink floral dress to join you for lunch? About a year ago?" Ryan looked up, confused for a moment, before recognition dawned. "Yes, actually. You're Georgia, right? Your hair. I remember it." Georgia smiled, touched that he recalled her name. "I am. I was in a complicated situation that day and couldn't accept. But I've thought about that moment more than you'd guess." They ended up sharing that coffee, after all. Georgia didn't explain everything. Some parts of her journey remained private, but she did tell him about finding the courage to live as her true self.
"I'm glad I ran into you again,"
Ryan said as they parted.
"Would you like to have dinner sometime?"
Georgia considered the invitation. Dating as a transgender woman brought challenges she was still navigating, but she'd promised herself to embrace new experiences. I'd like that, she replied, exchanging numbers. That evening, Georgia returned to her apartment, a new, larger one she'd moved into after a promotion at work. Photos lined her shelves. Georgia with her sister at a concert, with her engineering team at a conference, even one with her former roommates at their last poker night. She changed into comfortable loungewear, removed her makeup, and stood before the full-length mirror. The person who gazed back was unmistakably Georgia, not just in clothes and hair, but in the confidence of her posture, the peace in her expression, the authenticity in her eyes. The blonde wig that had started her journey lay stored in a memory box, replaced by her own hair that had grown long and healthy. She ran her fingers through it, remembering the frightened young man who had once viewed a day of cross-dressing as a humiliating punishment. "Thank you for losing that game," she whispered to her reflection, to the memory of Hunter.
You had to lose to finally win.
Her phone chimed with a message from Ryan, suggesting a restaurant for their date. Georgia smiled as she typed her reply, ready for whatever came next in her story. A story that had truly begun with a bad poker hand and a pink floral sundress, but would continue for many chapters to come. Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!